we'll get started. Afternoon, everybody. A big welcome to this afternoon's webinar. My name's Hannah and I'm from the AC Plus team. I also teach in one of our Ark schools. And we are also delighted to be joined by Joshua Perry, who is the director of Smartgrade. The partnership between AC Plus and Smartgrade is a relatively new one, but one we are incredibly excited about. So many of our schools have been looking for an effective tool for assessment that directly aligns with the AC Plus program and gives the capability to meaningfully interpret data. And Smartgrade does just that. So today we're going to look at how Smartgrade can support your school to do that alongside your AC Plus resources. So the agenda for today is that by the end of today's session, we will have looked at the purpose of using Smartgrade, what assessments and analysis options are available, and the all-important how do we actually use it. So we'll be kind of really confident on how to use it at the end of today's session. So to start with a reflection for each of us, if you've got pen and paper nearby, that's great. Please reflect on the following two questions. What assessments do you currently have at your school? What's working well, what's not? And what data do you typically gather from the assessments and what do you do with it? We're all coming from different contexts here, so it's really worth thinking about our own experiences. Please reflect on these questions just for a minute or so. Okay, so the reason I ask these questions is we want to think a little bit about what issues schools are facing with assessments. In our experience, schools using the program have reported to us that there are several issues that we can see on the board here. Please scan the issues on the slide and consider which ones resonate with you. Through the Smartgrade platform being aligned to the AC Plus resources, we are absolutely confident that we can alleviate many of these issues and concerns. I'm particularly excited about Smartgrade's potential to support with our analysis of data. After all, it's by drawing out the assessment trends for each cohort that gives us the tools as teachers to transform student understanding. And Smartgrade has a really brilliant feature for this. It's important for us to see what's available at a glance. Here's a quick overview of what is available for each subject on Smartgrade. Notice there's a bit of a difference between the autumn, spring versus the summer term, because that's when our cumulative assessments are placed. Today, we'll be talking about the termly diagnostic, in particular, the multiple choice questions, and we'll also show you where some of the written paper questions are stored within the Smartgrade platform. I just want to finish by sharing with you a couple of quotes from our teachers who have started using Smartgrade. Consider which issues they report that Smartgrade is helping to address. So here's the first. Notice what the teacher is commenting on. And certainly workload is something a number of our teachers are reporting to. I know here at Elvin, we're in our school in Wembley, we know that our teachers save so much time by doing the multiple choice questions directly online, and they auto mark, and that really, really helps. And here's our second quote. And this links back to the idea of data analysis. And we've got some brand new features in Smartgrade this term that can really help us identify trends really well. Okay, so finally, just to mention before we start this sort of live demo part of the session, you will be interested to know what other support is out there. Smartgrade are, and I know from my own experience, Smartgrade are super quick to respond if we have any questions, and they have a message function. And we know that on My Mastery, we can find our assessment handbooks that can really tell us how to use Smartgrade properly, and as well as some other guidance and information. So Smartgrade and My Mastery, and also emailing us at Ark Curriculum Plus can really support you there. So let's pass on to Josh. I'm going to stop sharing, and who's going to share with us a live demo and a bit more about Smartgrade. Over to you, Josh.
Thank you, Hannah. I am going to share my screen, as you say, and I'm going to give you a little bit of an introduction to Smartgrade and the Ark Curriculum Plus platform showing you the product. But before I start, in true live demo fashion, I should just check with Hannah that you can actually see my screen here. You can see the Smartgrade platform. You can see thumbs up. That's a good sign. So the first thing I'll say is this is what the Smartgrade platform looks like. So if you're to get access, if you haven't at the moment, this is what it looks like when you log on. I'm going to show you in this demo the marketplace, which is where you go to access your assessments, the markbooks area, which is where you go to enter data if it's an offline assessment, or where you go to set the assessment, find a link to share with students if it's an online assessment, and then crucially, the analysis area, because that's where all the good stuff starts. Just before I get into the details, I should say if you're planning to use the online assessments, the multiple choice assessments that Hannah has already been so enthusiastic about, I should just say that the default way of accessing those is with single sign-on with your school. So that is an important thing to just check that you have a single sign-on system we can integrate with, like Microsoft or Google. But the great thing about having single sign-on as a way of accessing this is that students don't need usernames and passwords. They can just log in with the credentials that they use to access their devices or your other systems and so on within the school. I'm going to jump in and show you the marketplace in a second. Hannah, I will give you license to interrupt me at any point if people are asking questions via the chat, or if indeed if you have questions that you think would be good to cover as we go along. So let's start in the marketplace. I'm going to come in and click here. And the marketplace is where all of our partner assessments are. We do have assessments from partners other than Ark Curriculum Plus, and you'll see examples of all assessments here. Also, you are able, as a school and multi-academy trust, to get a subscription to Smartgrade that allows you to create your own assessments. And I'm logged in as a fictional Mac called Elmwood Academy Trust, and we do create our own assessments here. So you'll see a bunch of assessments that are not Ark Curriculum Plus assessments. That's an additional cost to create your own assessments. But if you're part of Ark Curriculum Plus, what you get for free, no cost at all, is access to all of the Ark Curriculum Plus assessments. And they're super simple to find. I can just come in here and start typing Ark Curriculum Plus. And as you can see, they're all starting to show up. The first thing I'm going to show you is an offline assessment. I'm actually going to demo that with a primary assessment. This session is sort of more about the secondary side of things. I'm going to focus on the online secondary assessments. But the way that the offline assessments works is identical across primary and secondary. And because the summer assessments haven't happened yet, but some of the autumn and spring, the summer secondary assessments haven't happened, but the primary, autumn and spring ones have, I've got some good dummy data in my platform around primary. So I'm going to show you a little bit about an offline assessment to start with. So here's a year 4 assessment. I can see here that it's an autumn 1 assessment, and I can click view. And what I see here immediately before I do anything else is I've got the test papers and the mark schemes here. I think you can get these from My Mastery as well, but they are available in the Smartgrade platform if you want to access those test papers and mark schemes. You can also click view marks here. You can see all the topics available for that assessment. There are lots of topics for this one. You can see the question text, and you can see the topics that have been assigned to those assessments. You probably don't need to come into here, but it's useful for you to know that all of this is pre-set up, even on an offline assessment, because when I demo the markbook and analysis, you'll see that all of this information flows through. The question text is there on the markbooks and analysis, so it's easy to pick out questions, and then all the various topics are allocated as well, so that when we get into analysis, you can do some analysis at topic level. So that's the basic structure of an assessment, and that's you've got the PDFs there if it's an offline assessment. For an online assessment, it's actually very similar. So I am going to search, actually let's search for science. You can see I've got some science assessments here, but I'm going to demo to you with geography. So now you can see it's just switched, and it's now showing me all of the available geography assessments. And I'm going to look at some of the autumn 2 assessments that were sat in December by schools who are participating. Now, the first thing you'll notice with these online assessments, is that as well as the view button and the assign button, and we had both of those before, we've got this preview button. Now, what preview does is rather nice, is it allows you to actually see what the online assessments look like. And I'm going to show you that right now by clicking on one. And hopefully, Hannah will just confirm that the switching between tabs is working. Can you see the assessment has loaded up? Great.
We're looking at the welcome.
We are, yes, welcome. So this is what I'm doing here is I'm showing you what an assessment would look like for a student, and you can actually click on this for any of these Ark Curriculum Plus assessments yourself to just see the experience of the student and run through the questions yourself in advance. This is a dummy assessment. I'm not actually recording any data if I click preview, but I can still play with how it works. So I'm clicking preview, and here we are. Here's the assessment. So it's a multiple choice assessment, and I can look at the questions here. This first one doesn't have an image. It's just a straight question. Let's see if I can get this right. Studies Earth's surface and how it changes over time. Hannah is marking me in her mind to see how good my geography is. Question 2 does have an image. So I would use this photo to study. I think I'm going to use that to study natural features. Let's see if I would succeed on maths mastery or not. You get the idea. And I'm getting all of these questions as I come through. So now basically as a teacher, I can sort of have that experience of a student. Just a couple of nice features to notice here, so you can be reassured it's a good experience for students taking the assessments. The first is you can see at the top here the questions that have been done. I can see it's out of 30, for example. And I can even jump between the questions here if I wanted to jump forward or backward. You see once I've answered, they go blue. So it's really nice and easy to track my progress. Similarly, at the bottom here, I can click review and submit, and it'll actually just show me quickly which questions I've got the answers to, show me that these are unanswered. Again, I can use this to dive into an individual question. So that's the online experience. It's really nice. It's been optimized to work on iPads, Chromebooks, in desktops. So whatever device you'd be using in school, typically this will work on. And I'll come back to actually how you administer those assessments in a second. But I'm just going to show you one more thing, and then I'll pause to see if we have any questions. And that is, from this marketplace, there's one more thing you can do. You can click this assign button. And what assign does is it gives you a way of allocating that assessment to classes. So we have MIS integration as standard at Smartgrade. If you're using this in your school or MAT, you will have MIS integration. So we'll know the classes in your school. We'll know the teaching groups that you have set up. And sure enough, I have one, and I'm set up as a MAT. If you're a school, you'd only ever see one school here. As a MAT, you can actually see multiple schools here and set up all in one go, which is rather neat. But I've got one secondary that has geography classes. That's Oakdale Academy. I could see all of my classes here. I could untick schools or even untick classes if there were some people I didn't want to apply this assessment to. But if I do want to assign this to classes, I just click assign, and it's going to create the underlying structures of those assessments and the markbooks and so on just by doing that. It's as simple as that. So that's the process in the marketplace of viewing the details of the assessment, previewing them, and then assigning to classes. Any questions before I jump on, Hannah?
Tracy has a question about the which may come more at the end, but we need to evidence assessments in our books. Is there a facility to be able to download each assessment so that the students can stick it in their books?
It's a great question. So I'll show you the ranges of analysis that we have, and there's a lot there. We don't at the moment have a student report view, but today is a good day to ask me about this because actually an hour ago I was on a call reviewing wireframes for a new student report style, which will be coming in from September onwards. So we are going to that. And actually, as well as the QLA side of things, the question level, what that's going to have is a topic summary. So you can see a student's sort of top performing topics and underperforming topics. And we actually think that's kind of in some ways can be a bit more of a meaningful language for students because you can get a bit lost in the weeds of the QLA. But so that's a long way of saying student report, you won't see it if you log in today, but it is coming very soon. And I know that because I've seen the wireframes. Any other questions, Hannah?
Not yet.
Super.
That's the next one now.
Right, I shall bash on. So I've talked to you about the marketplace. I'm now going to come into the markbooks area. Now, markbooks is where you come both to enter data for offline assessments and also for online assessments, and they look slightly different. So let's take the example to begin with of an offline assessment. I'm going to come back to Year 4 Ark Curriculum Plus, because it's, like I said, basically same process, whether it's primary or secondary. So this would be applicable to you. I'm just going to find this assessment, and I'm going to click Edit. So if I was coming in and the assessment, I had no data in yet, it would say percentage complete 0. If it's been completed and submitted, it'll say 100. This view is quite nice because if you're a subject lead across the school or even a school administrator or principal, you can actually see all markbooks for your school. If I get rid of this filter, you can see I've got lots of markbooks in here because I'm an administrator. I can sort by percentage complete and go and nudge the people that haven't entered their data and so on. But for demo, I'm going to come in. If I was a class teacher, I would just see my assessment. So I maybe only see 1 or 2 of these, depending on how many I'm teaching. I come in, I click edit, and I'm going to get an offline markbook. So this is what it looks like if you've had a paper assessment and then you're entering the data into Smartgrade. And you can see here all of the questions along from 1 to 32. I can see I've entered most of the grades, but I haven't entered all of them. And I want to show you just a couple of nice features here. The first is it's really easy to mark a student as absent. So Hester, for example, let's say Hester was absent for whatever reason, I could just easily mark them as absent for either all parts, or if it's a multi-part assessment, for one part only. And let's say Hester is then later not absent and I want to come back and enter data. I actually don't have to enter data at the question level like I'm about to show you. I can enter a whole mark. So this test is out of 67 and I know that Hester got 45. I don't need to do my QLA if I don't want to for whatever reason. But if I do want to do my question level analysis, particularly if my school is keen for me to evidence that people have done the assessments, then it's really easy to come in, and I'm going to show you how easy it is just by entering some 1s and 0s here. You can see this question is out of 1 mark. That's what this line here does. And also you can see the question text here. You know, I mentioned earlier that the question text is always on the markbooks. So this is nice and easy. If I'm going through and doing all of my question of 30s in one go, or if I'm doing it student by student and I just want to check I'm in the right place, I can actually just check the question text there. I can also see the topics that a question has been tagged with, and you can, Ark Curriculum Plus does have the option to tag a question with multiple topics should they wish. I think in geography, we just have 1 topic tagged in the assessments I'm about to show you, but sometimes they can have multiple topics tagged. So I'm going to finish entering my data here. I want to show you that a couple of other things. One is that we have something called the N grade that allows you to track data where the student has not answered. So N means not answered. So that's, you know, this might be that they attempted it and got it wrong. Not answered is effectively they just left it blank. Copy and paste works. So I'm going to highlight those 3 cells and then click paste, even drag and drop data along. So we've done lots of things to basically make it as easy as Excel to enter your data, but with more validation and a slightly simpler way of managing this across your whole school. So this is my offline markbook. I've got all of my data entered. You can see the submit button has now gone blue. It was gray until I entered my last little morsel of data. This is a multi-part assessment. I could have entered data for both parts here. And I'm going to click submit, and I'm going to come to my analysis area. It just checks that I want to do that. And sure enough, I do, which is great. And here I am, and I've got some data that I can analyze. But because I want to focus on secondary data, I'm actually going to leave this now for a second, and I'm going to come back and show you the process for an online assessment. And then we'll come back to analysis in a second. So I'm back in the My Markbooks area, but this time I want to look for an Ark Curriculum Plus geography assessment. And sure enough, here I have one at the top of my list here. So I'm now at Oakdale Academy, Year 7, and I'm looking at the geography assessment that I was looking at earlier that's been assigned to my class here. It says 100% complete. That's because I've already got some answers in, but I'm going to talk you through the process as if it was at 0, 100% complete. So the first thing is for unused assessments, for new assessments, you'll see this list of a few different options. I can preview the assessment again, but I've got a few other things I can do here. And the 2 I want to focus on are these 2 here. Copy link. If I click that, what it's going to do is give me a link. It's automatically copied to my clipboard that I can share with my class when I'm ready to give them the assessment to sit. If they're actually logging in on a device, then they will see the assessments that are ready for them automatically. So you can give the link and that'll take them straight to the assessment, or they could just log in and they'll see a menu of available assessments and go to the relevant one. They'll only see assessments, though, if the teacher has started them. And this is really important. So if I click Start Test here, just checks, am I ready to? And you can see it's going to change color. So a started assessment changes color. So if you're doing this in class and you want to make sure that people are only answering in the period of time that you've allotted for them, you click Start Assessment, and then that will effectively make it accessible. Until you do that, it's not possible to access the assessment. Once you're finished, you click End Assessment, and that will stop students from being able to enter any more data. It won't erase the assessment or anything like that if they're still in it. If they haven't submitted the question they're on, they won't be able to. But basically, that means you can give some time control to these assessments, and I imagine that might be particularly important for the summer assessments. Do you put a time limit on your diagnostic assessments in autumn and spring, actually, Hannah?
Largely, we don't. But I did have a question that could be relevant here, which is what happens if a student was absent, but then is there the next lesson? Can they
Great
access
question.
the test?
I'm glad you asked. So let's start with the offline assessment. You just come back into the markbook and adjust their score. For an online assessment, you would just come in and use these options again. So let's say this one here, I've ended it. So I could come back in, set it for them, click start assessment. It'll be available to them again, click stop when they finish. So you can start and stop the assessment anytime for any individual student, effectively.
Brilliant.
Oh, did you have any other questions?
Yeah, we've just got two other questions come up. So one of them is a question about single sign-on, and it reads, we really struggle with this. Each student needs to have a single login. It took ages to figure this out and sort it out, so we were unable to do the autumn assessment at Chromebooks. So it's a question about that. And the second question is about, can more than one person be an administrator to like assign the quizzes?
Yeah, so let's take those in order. With the struggling with single sign-on, it would be great. What I suggest is if you could follow up. I don't know if you have spoken to our support team about it, but Hannah, if you could put the support email address in the chat, it's help@smartgrade.co.uk. If you could just put that in the chat. It would be great to have a specific follow-up conversation with you about that and understand a bit more about what went wrong and if it's a support issue that we can help you with so that it works next time. Because sometimes we find the first time people have access, it might be about what data is coming through from the MIS. Do we have the first email addresses? And once you get over that hump, it's all fine. Or if it's a more fundamental thing, in which case we could talk to you about other options, whether we can consider other options to set up. For now, we have that working quite well across hundreds of schools. So we know that the single sign-on way works well when it is set up, but I would really like to hear what the specific problems are, because it might be that we're ignoring a thing that's a problem for you. So do get in touch with us. I will let the support team know afterwards that I want to be interested in that ticket and get involved in the conversation where I can. The second thing about administrators, yes, you can. You can have as many administrators as you want, and I'll show you how you do that. So in this top corner here, you can see there is a little hamburger, a little yellow hamburger, and one of the options on it is configuration. And I'm going to open the configuration tab. And what it's going to do is it's going to give me a series of options, one of which is school users. So there's actually, I've got MAT users here because I'm in a MAT. But if you are just a single school, you won't see that. You'll just see school users. And I can come in and I'll have a table of all of my users here. Now, what I can do from this table is I can find any user that is just a normal user. We've got this chap here, Gregory, for example. I can come in and I can edit their permission levels, and I can change Gregory to be an admin. That would give Gregory the same rights as me. I'm a top level person to see all of the markbooks from across the school, for example. I do have another option, which is leader. And you can be either a subject leader or a year group leader. And those, when you're a leader, you can see all the markbooks from that year or that subject. So there are a few granular permission levels, effectively.
And who can change that configuration?
So any admin can come in and do this. So you need to be an admin to start with, and an admin can change the configuration of other people. But if you're a user, you can't change yourself.
Thanks.
Right. I am now going to crack on, and we'll come back to our assessments that we were setting up. So this one here, let's imagine that we had started the assessment. We'd either shared the link or the students had logged into their devices. So they've taken that assessment. I showed you what it looks like. They finished. So we've now stopped the assessment effectively, which is why it says this here. Now, what happens next? Well, I've got this magic button called auto mark. We do have in Smartgrade some of our test partners set up assessments that have a mixture of multiple choice and free text. And in those situations, there's a little bit of marking for teachers to do, though not too much. It's nice and simple to do. But the great thing about Ark Curriculum Plus is they just use multiple choice assessments. And where they're just multiple choice, you get this magical auto mark button. So I'm going to click on auto mark, and you'll see what happens is I'm taken straight to the analysis module where I can see all of my data. And I'm actually going to, although I'm taken to the question level, I'm going to jump straight to the topic level, actually, because this is quite a nice thing to show you. And as I mentioned, when we were talking earlier about evidencing assessment, we sometimes quite like encouraging people to look at the topic almost before the question level, because the two, it's one influences the other quite nicely. So here, for example, I can see that this autumn diagnostic assessment was based on presumably the two units that were taught in the autumn term. Geography and Me and Our Planet. And I can see that they're both at 15 marks. And I can see whether I did better in one topic than the other. I might have done worse on the previous topic because it's a bit longer ago and it's less fresh in the mind, or there may have been some tricky concepts. And that immediately might help me sort of just jump into that question of, where are my gaps? So is there anything that I want to think about reteaching and so on? You can see there's a heat map on this, so I can see where people have done best. Darker is always better in Smartgrade. And actually what I'm going to do is I'm going to put on a filter. So I'm going to come in here, I'll just show you this again. This is filters and options button. It's often your good friend, this button. And I'm going to come in and I'm going to choose filter. I'm going to filter by one of these topics. And I did less well on Our Planet. So actually I want to focus on that. Now I'm going to come to the question level analysis, and you'll see I have fewer questions here. It's filtered by that topic. So I'm now just seeing questions from the topic I selected, which was Our Planet. I could look at all of the questions in one go. And in actual fact, in this assessment, they're neatly done. So 1 to 15 was from one topic and 16 to 30 are from the other topic. But it's just a nice way of just limiting what's on this question level analysis to the relevant questions. Now, immediately I can see my heat map, right? I can see the sort of the dark and the light. So which questions I did better on, which I did worse on. I can also sort down here, little markers on this average bit here. So if I click on that, it allows me actually to sort, so I can have the questions I struggled most at going up towards the questions I did best at as a class. I could do that in the other order if I wanted to. So there's lots of ways of really zoning in on where do I have my gaps before we get on to some of the really exciting stuff like the distractor analysis. Question level analysis is really useful to look at this kind of thing. I can also aggregate up. I could aggregate by class. So if I've got multiple classes, I would see them side by side. I've just got one class. I'm just going to see one class, or by school. And here I can see, again, schools like this. I could even aggregate by MAT if I was in a MAT, but I'm not. So I won't focus on that just now. Actually, one other thing I'd like to show you at the topic level, which is quite nice, is there is another aggregation level that people often don't know about. It's the all schools option. So if I choose that, what it's going to do is it's going to aggregate by effectively not just my school, but it allows me to bring in data from other schools. So I'm going to come up to this selector at the top, and I'm going to bring in data from other schools. We always anonymize data from schools around the country, to be clear. You're never going to be comparing yourself to schools with sort of real, never be able to access pupil level data from other schools or anything. It's a fully secure platform. But what you can see now here is that even at the topic level, let's go back and get both topics on here. So I'm going to clear this filter. Here, what I can see now is I brought in data from all schools, and I can compare my organization. I've only got 10 students in from my organization with the whole sample. We actually had over 2,000 students using this assessment in the autumn term. I mean, it's growing all the time. I think that's gone up a good bit since then. So what I can see here is that actually I can see across all schools participating, the average for Unit 1 was 10, and the average for Unit 2 was 9.6. And I underperformed both of those a little bit in my school. So before we get to the overall results, before we get to any of the other levels, I can just see some benchmarking on how my schools have done. I could see that other schools' data at school level. So this actually allows me to see where I am in the list of all participating schools. And sadly, I'm at the bottom of that list there. So that's a little shame for me. But this analysis at the other schools level is something that people don't always know is there. Right, what am I going to do now? I am going to get rid of that aggregation because I want to go back to the individual level, and I'm going to jump into the newly released feature of distractor level analysis. So this is the really fun stuff. This is where multiple choice comes into its own. So we've got a grid with all of the questions, just like we did with the question level analysis. The difference is instead of a 1 and a 0, what we've got is the choice that people chose. We assign letters to them. They're not actually the letters that you would see if you're a student sitting the assessment. Students get the questions in random orders, which is good practice, so you can't sort of look over somebody's shoulder and see that they're clicking D. It's randomized between students or between classes. But the way that our grid works is A is always the correct answer. So as I look at this here and it says A, this is always the correct answer. Want to reiterate, that doesn't mean that you always click A to get an answer right if you're a student. That is just for the analysis module. And then B, C, and D are the various distractors. What are the distractors, you might ask? Well, just hover over here and it'll tell you. So you can see here the questions just by hovering. So this one here is what map shows the United Kingdom shaded in green. If I want to see the images, I can actually click on those as well. And then if I click on these letters here, let's look at Norma and just scroll across. I can see what Norma selected. So Norma selected option D for this one here, which was surface and moves. That's not right. But she did get this one right, natural features. And I can see those answers just by jumping across, could jump up or down. So it's really easy on this grid to actually see how people answered this quiz in one neat place. You've got the heat map again, and the darker it is, the higher the number. So here, for example, just let's look at question 1. 50% of people chose D, which is a wrong answer. And I know that because I look at the top and I can see what the question is. And if I hover over D, I can see that that's the wrong answer of surface and moves. So that was a really popular and common distractor. Half the people got it right, but half the people got it wrong in that way. And that helps me understand what the misconception is in my class. And if I'm looking across here, where I see 50% or so, sometimes I might even see higher, like 60% here, I know that out of 4 options, that means that's a common misconception, and that might factor into what I'm going to do next in terms of teaching. It's not just misconceptions I'm looking for, though, here. I'm also looking for questions where it looks a bit like pot luck, and maybe they didn't know the answer to begin with. So let's look at this one here, question 16. This is interesting. 30% of people got it right. 10% chose B, 20% chose C, 40% chose D. It's kind of a bit of a mishmash of all of them. There is a bit more of a misconception here, but it's sort of much more evenly spread. So, I might be thinking here that this is a distractor, but I might also just be thinking that they were guessing because, particularly if this one was a bit higher, I might be saying, well, this is a kind of a somewhat random distribution. And actually, the problem is they just don't know the material, not that they were distracted by one particularly compelling answer. And your reteaching would be different in different circumstances for both of those things. I'm just going to do one more thing to show you a way if you want to get rid of the noise of the individual students, or if you have multiple classes, you can use that aggregation there again. So I'm going back into filters and options that I've been into several times. I'm going to choose aggregate by class. I think I just have one class here, but if I had multiple classes, I'd be able to see their data side by side. Hannah, I know you've used this now for your autumn assessments. Do you want to just give us your perspective on what you noticed from the assessment and which questions, what things jumped out at you to give people a bit of color of the kind of insights they can glean from this that might otherwise not jump out if you weren't using this product?
Yeah, absolutely. We found Smartgrade so useful in terms of this, giving us this kind of instant understanding of misconceptions and knowledge gaps. So, Josh, if you hover over question 3, for me, this was something we saw. So in this question for my students, and I compared all of our year 7 classes together, so it's actually quite a big data set, that students got confused between west and east. They were just muddling those two up. Not many of them picked northeast and not many of them picked southwest because they were fairly established on the north and south, but they were just muddling their east and west. So that's something that I'm then going to reteach with my class and check they're really super clear on that. And I know this from the data because I saw 27% of them got it wrong. And of that 27%, it was 23% that picked answer B east. So that's like this, and it comes up as a sort of dark red on the heat map. Compared with question 6, Josh, please, thank you. There was so the correct answer was the North Sea, but there was a pretty even spread between the answer that they picked. So that shows me they were pretty much guessing. Some picked Atlantic, some picked Mediterranean, some picked Thames. So they just hadn't learned that. They hadn't learned their British Isles map correctly. I know, I just need to go and reteach that whole map and just really, really clarify. Had more of them picked Atlantic, that would have then told me that they were just confusing sea versus ocean. So it really depends, the spread of the incorrect answers can really, really tell me a lot. And actually, I would say that's one of the most useful features of our analysis that really directly links into teacher practice and we find super useful.
Thanks, Hannah. So that's the distractor analysis. You've got lots of ways of aggregating it. Again, you can even aggregate it by school if you wanted to see a summary of the whole school. You could look at it across a mat. If you're in a mat, you could literally see, if you're a network lead for a subject, across a mat, you could see this kind of analysis at this level of detail. So there's a lot of power here. I haven't yet shown you the overall marks. For the network diagnostic assessments, you get the raw score and the raw percentage, and you do get some of the standardized data. But actually, I'm going to go back to one of the primary assessments to show you how some of this works, because the standardized data is particularly powerful when you get to those summer cumulative assessments. In the diagnostic ones, you're probably focusing more on the sort of question level side of things. So let's just go back to the Ark Curriculum Plus family of assessments here, and I'm going to go to maths. And I'm going to go to year 4, or autumn 2 and year 4, which was the assessment I was looking at before. And I'm going to look at some of the overall data that you can expect. I'll just get rid of actually that thing there just to focus on this. So as well as your raw score and raw percentage, for all of the assessments that are the sort of the cumulative assessments that you get in Smartgrade, you will get a percentile rank based on the entire cohort of participating schools, which I think will be, a good few thousand in the summer term. Why is that useful? Well, it means that alongside your, all of this granular analysis, I'm just going to sort it by raw score. You've actually got a slightly more meaningful grade, right? If I told you that, Dylan has 19 out of 67, is that good? Is that bad? It doesn't sound great, but like sort of what does that mean in a national context? Well, the global allows you to put that in more of a national context. So this is a percentile rank based on all participating students. And I can see that actually Dylan was at 20%, the 20th percentile. So just teetering on the bottom 20%. And we know that Ofsted consider, the bottom 20% to be a priority level. So I might just be thinking about that in terms of what interventions I'm planning for Dylan, or how I'm considering what my next steps are with that student. There are some other scores in there. We also have a global standardized score, which is a sort of a 70 to 130, where 100 is the mean score. You can toggle on and off which scores that you want. You might be used to seeing those on other assessments like GL assessments. I tend to find the percentile rank is quite nice because everyone tends to understand a percentile rank. They don't get confused with other scales as well. But you have a range of those options. And then just the last thing to say here is you can actually add your own grading structure on top. So we have, I'm not going to show you this now, but this is something that would be very easy for you to do if you wanted to, and our help team would always be able to sort of support you in this. You can basically add your own set of thresholds. So you might say, well, we in school, we use a 1 to 5 system, or depending on the year, you might use a 9 to 1. You can actually set thresholds that say this raw score equates to this grade, so that your own grading system shows up in this table as well. And that option is available to you. I did a bit of a whistle-stop tour through everything there. Hannah, any questions, any other questions that have come up, or any questions you have on this?
No questions have come up. Are there any more? Please do type in the chat now. We're really keen to answer any questions.
Yeah, all I would say, whilst people are just thinking about whether they wish to formulate any other questions, is I've shown you what I think is the most important analysis to really get into Smartgrade to begin with, particularly things like the distractor analysis that I was showing you before on an online assessment and so on. There is a lot of other analysis in here, and as you get used to using Smartgrade, you'll see some other things. We have this thing called subject analysis, which allows you to actually look at several subjects side by side, so you get the percentile rank of several subjects side by side. We've got some progress analysis, which would allow you to see a grid of the difference in score between 2 terms. So there's some sort of quite deep cuts that you could go into here. But actually, I think what I would be considering in your position, particularly if you're not using these assessments at the moment, is do you see a value? See, it's really accessing that value of we're going to be able to use these online assessments to get really diagnostic information on what's going on with our curriculum, and Smartgrade will support you to do that.
Yeah. Brilliant. My only other question is, I'm keen to hear a bit more about the student report. What do you think that will look? Can we have a sneak preview? Can you verbally tell us what you think that might look like, and what students might expect?
Yeah, so the debate we're having at the moment, the thing we know we are including is a sort of a topic by topic analysis where you can see the potential marks for topic and then what the student actually achieved, and it's sort of visually represented, which is nice. We're then just talking about whether we include the QLA always alongside that, because in our experience, actually, the QLA is more commonly the thing people want at the moment. And I think you mentioned that somebody had asked about that earlier. That is a question we hear. or whether we make it, so whether the report always includes both, or whether it's an option to include one or the other, or both, basically. And it's sort of, some of that is a philosophical question about where we want people to look and what we think is the right place to look at data, because, like I say, often people haven't done that topic analysis in the past because it just hasn't been available to them. And so they might not think to use it, but we think that maybe having the two together could be beneficial. So that's the kind of thing we're debating before we put it on.
And does it include students being able to see like the result they got? Like, is there any facility where students can then, is that part of the student report?
Exactly. So it's the overall grade, it's the question level, and it's the topic level, some combination of all of those.
Brilliant. Yeah, I know students will be, the first thing they do when they complete is next lesson, Miss, what did I get? What did I get? Can you tell me? Can I see it? Can I log on and see it? So they're very, they're super keen to know their own progress. And I think it'd be amazing if they can see, sorry?
I said we are keen to support that friendly competition.
Amazing. And they, if there's a way they can then see which particular questions they did well in and not, that can generate some independence where they can think about their own progress as well, which would be really amazing for them. Thank you. Right. Thank you very much, Josh. I put Josh's QR code up here where you can book in a call with Smartgrade, and I'll talk you through everything one-to-one, which is very exciting.
Yeah, and I think that's a good, I'm just skimming through the questions, and I can see that Joe said, if I want to proceed, what do I need to do? And I think what you're doing here, Hannah, is you're answering that question effectively, right? So the thing to do is to use this QR code to book in a call with us. You could also email the email address that's put up here, which is help@smartgrade.co.uk. And you will get a short session with one of our team. If you've been through the webinar, it'll be much more about just how we onboard you and the next steps for onboarding. Just to reiterate, there is no cost to this if you are an Ark Curriculum Plus school. So the actual steps involved, we send you out an agreement, which is more about data processing and data sharing, because obviously for GDPR reasons, we need to make sure all of that is covered legally. So you get a document to sign, which gives you says that you're willing to share your data with us. Then we get you linked up to your MIS. We use a service called Wand for that, which your school is very likely to have. But even if you don't, we can get that installed. But nearly all schools do these days. That's what enables us to connect to you. We then put you live. We give you your first login, and you can get cracking. So we generally find that schools are on board within a few days of getting in touch with us.
Brilliant. That's very thorough. Thank you. Tracy, can you say a little bit more about your question? You have a question about year 8 on Smartgrade. Or we can email to talk individually if that's helpful. Cool. Sure. Let's email. Let's talk that through. It would be great to chat. Probably not on this call, but it would be great to chat. Anyone else got any more questions? Brilliant. Fantastic, Josh. Thank you so much. That was so super thorough, and kind of take us from maybe not knowing how to use it to really feeling quite confident how to use it, and also seeing the potential of the power it has to really transform the way we do assessment. So thank you, everyone. In summary, we really help, and we really believe that using Smartgrade together with the AC Plus resources is going to really transform the way we can use assessment, solve so many of those issues, especially things like workload and just having the power to analyze our results. And that's ultimately going to help our students, which is what we're here to do. So thank you very much for taking the time. I know it's absolutely exhausting at the end of the day. So we really appreciate your time. And there will be a link to this webinar. If anyone didn't get to see it live, please pass the word to your fellow colleagues at school.